Roy Cleveland Sullivan. He was a park ranger that ended up being struck by lightning 7 times in his lifetime. So you're probably wondering, okay, getting struck by lightning 7 times is extremely unlucky, but like, what was this dude's story? How did this even happen? What's going on, guys? It's your boy Scrub here, back again with another video. Hope you guys are having a great day. I know I am, and today we're going to be talking about somebody that didn't have a whole lot of great days, which is arguably the unluckiest man in history. Well, Roy Cleveland Sullivan was a guy who was born on February 7th, 1912 in Greene County, Virginia. He was one of 12 kids, so quite a big family. In his childhood, he was a pretty outdoorsy guy. He liked to be outside, and naturally, when it came time to get a job, he started looking for something that would let him be outdoors a lot. And in 1936, he started a job at Shenandoah National Park in Virginia. And as part of that job, he basically had to patrol and monitor the entire park. You know, he was outside a lot, and it was a really, really big park. So it would often be times where he would be walking from one thing to another while patrolling, and there was a thunderstorm, and there just wouldn't really be a lot of places to hide because, you know, he's in the middle of patrolling the national park. And what really sucks about this is, like, his luck was so bad that people started to avoid being around him later in his life. You know, he had been struck so many times and so many bad things happened to him that people really just assumed that there had to be a curse on this dude at this point, right? Like, there's no way someone's that unlucky. And he recalls a specific instance when he was walking with the chief ranger, like his boss, you know, on a thunderstormy type of day. And as soon as lightning struck, the chief ranger looked at him and was like, "All right, I'll see you later. I don't want to talk here anymore. You know, I'm out of here." But that's a little bit of backstory on Roy Cleveland Sullivan here. Now we're going to get into the times he was extremely unlucky, which is the 7 times he was struck by lightning. Yeah, that's right. So the first one, 6 years after starting his job as a park ranger in April of 1942, there was a thunderstorm going on while he was patrolling the park, and he was kind of looking for a place to hide from the rain and lightning. And he ended up going underneath this fire lookout tower. In national parks, they have these huge towers, you know, that are kind of built to let people get a better view of everything and watch for smoke from any forest fires. But this particular tower that he decided to hide under in this instance was newly built, so it didn't have a lightning rod on it yet. And basically, this tower, because it didn't have a lightning rod, ended up getting struck by lightning 7 or 8 times to the point where it catches on fire. There's fire jumping all over the place. And Sullivan was inside of it to take shelter, right? So he scrambles out of this thing that's on fire now, that's been struck a bunch, and as he's running out of this fire tower lookout thing, he gets a few feet out of it and all of a sudden gets struck by lightning. And this was the worst of all 7 of his strikes, but it ended up burning like a half-inch strip all the way down his right leg, his toe, and then burned a hole in his shoe. But like, imagine the fear of, oh crap, it's a thunderstorm, I'm gonna hide in here, only for where you're hiding to get struck by lightning 8 times, and then when you go to run away, you get struck too. Awful luck. But it gets worse. For a while, everything's all chill, but in July of 1969, he got hit by lightning while in his truck, which is supposed to be very, very unusual. He was driving on a mountain road, obviously in the national park, doing his job, and usually when you're driving a car that gets struck by lightning, the metal body of the vehicle kind of like sheds some of the electricity from it. It's called a Faraday cage, it's what it acts like. And so usually that's the best place to get hit by lightning, you know, is like, all right, I'm driving a car, if it strikes, at least the car is going to take a majority of the charges. Well, in this instance, the lightning hit a tree nearby and his window was open. The lightning reflected off the tree, what are the odds of that happening, and knocked him unconscious while he was driving his truck on a mountain road. Obviously, because it had already reflected, this one like wasn't as powerful as the first one, but it ended up burning off his eyebrows and eyelashes, set some of his hair on fire, and then he was driving. So, you know, thankfully there wasn't an accident, but the truck just ended up slowly rolling to a stop at a cliff. Like, oh, okay, so if it would have been any sooner or later that he would have been knocked unconscious, he would have driven off a cliff. And at this point, you're like, all right, this dude's luck can't get worse. But we have 5 more lightning strikes. There's a third time this dude gets struck by lightning, right? This time it's just in his front yard, no crazy story. It hits a nearby power transformer and jumped from the power transformer to his left shoulder, shocked him pretty bad, but all in all, you know, not as bad as the other 2. But still, getting struck by lightning 3 times, the odds of that happening should be slim to none. There's very few worlds where you should be like, I gotta be careful about about getting struck 3 times. But as I said, that's still not enough. That one there's not a lot of details on because it just happened in his front yard. But this next one in 1972, so only 2 years later, he was working in a ranger station in the Shenandoah National Park, when he was struck again. This time, once again, his hair gets set on fire and he tries to smother the flames with his jackets. It's not really working, so he runs to the bathroom and he tries to put his head under the water tap to put out the fire, but it doesn't fit, so he uses a wet towel. And at this point he is getting used to this, but it's not like it's a pleasant experience anytime you get shocked with thousands of volts of electricity and your hair bursts into flames and you have to be running around the place because nothing's able to put it out. Honestly, this is awful. And at that point, up to this point, he thought it was just bad luck. But after the 4th strike, the 4th time he gets struck, this is when he starts to believe that there's some force out there that's just trying to destroy him. He starts to be fearful of death. He starts to think everything's out to get him. And for months after the 4th strike, whenever he is caught in a storm with his truck, he pulls over, lies down, and just waits until it passes. He started to believe that he honestly attracted lightning. So if he stood in a crowd of people, he carried a case of water on him in case his hair was set on fire. He started to think there must have been something in his blood that was attracting all of these lightning strikes to him, which, I mean, definitely not fun to feel like you're the reason all these problems are happening to you. But of course, it does get worse, dude. On August 7th, 1973, he's out on patrol again, and he sees a storm cloud coming, and he drives away. And as he's driving away, this cloud starts to pick up speed, and he says that it seemed like it was following him. So he's trying to outrun the cloud, and it's kind of coming behind him, but finally he decides that he's been running long enough and he can get out of his truck. And so he gets out of his truck, and as soon as he gets out of his truck, he gets struck by a lightning bolt. And this was the one time that he says he actually saw the bolt that hit him. He says he was walking across this opening, and the lightning hit him. It moved down his left arm, his left leg, and knocked off his shoe. And then it crossed over to his right leg, and he was still conscious at this point, right? So at this point, his body is just so used to being struck by lightning, it's not even passing out. And so as he's struck, he crawls over to his truck because his legs just got shocked, and he has to pour a can of water, which he always has on him, on his head now because it had burst into flames again. At this point, the dude should have considered going bald, honestly, no disrespect, but if every time you get struck by lightning, the hair lights on fire, it's probably time to just say goodbye to it. But it's still not done. The next strike, June 5th, 1976, he gets struck, this time in his ankle. He saw a cloud, thought it was following him, and tried to run away, but he was struck anyways, and once again his hair catches on fire. So this dude's just on the ultimate bad luck streak. That's strike number 6. But the 7th one, the last one, the very last one, was in 1977. Lightning ended up hitting him again while he was fishing in a pond. The lightning hit the top of his head, setting his hair on fire, and burned his chest and stomach. And so then, obviously in a crap ton of pain because he got shocked, he turned around to go back to his car after putting his hair out of fire. And this is when you're like, oh my god, something has to have cursed this dude. As he's on his way back to the truck after being struck with lightning for the 7th time, there's a bear there, which is after the fish he's catching. So he ends up having to hit the bear with a stick and run to the car. And he said it was the 22nd time in his life he'd had to hit a bear with a stick. And listen, I know that obviously people that work in a national park are going to have more interaction with animals, but it's not every day someone gets struck by lightning 7 times in their lifetime, and then on top of that, also have had to fight off a bear 22 times. That's just nature's way of saying it doesn't like you. So obviously that's all the 7 times, and sadly Roy passed away at 71. As for the reasoning behind it, scientists have looked into it. They've wondered if there was any particular reason this guy was so conductive to electricity, and people really have no idea why he had such bad luck, and even the people around him had no clue why it was either. And obviously when all this was going on, a lot of people thought it was a hoax, but the Guinness Book of World Records themselves went out there and investigated everything and confirmed it to be true. So all in all, it's just a pretty weird situation where this guy was just a human lightning rod and everything he did led to him being struck. Pretty crazy. Alright, so that guy I think kind of takes the cake as the unluckiest man in the world, but I decided to do a couple more stories about other people from history that were just insanely unlucky, and the second one we're going to be talking about is Frane Selec. I'm probably just going to refer to him as Selec for the rest of the video. And surprisingly, this dude is still alive. He was born on June 14th, 1929, and he's known for being the luckiest and unluckiest man in the world. Basically, he's had 7 near-death experiences, which a normal person should not have been able to survive, you know, which calls into question if you're the luckiest person for surviving 7 times or the unluckiest for 7 of those things happening to you. But either way, it's a pretty crazy story, dude. And, you know, let me know in the comments section if you think this is lucky or unlucky of him. So it all started in January of 1962. The Croatian music teacher, Mr. Selec, was traveling from Sarajevo to Dubrovnik by train. You know, just sitting on the train doing his thing. But he did not realize that when he was sitting on the train that he was about to, like, take this 40-year journey that was going to be marked with all these freak accidents and him almost dying at every turn. So he's on this train in 1962, right? And without really any explanation, the train ends up going off the tracks and plunges into this river. And obviously, it's near Sarajevo, so it's a pretty cold river. And the train hits the ice water, it gets stuck there for a little bit, and 17 passengers on this train die. But Mr. Selec, the music teacher, manages to swim back to shore, manages to survive the hypothermia that's also there from being in the cold water, lives through the shock, lives through the broken arms and all the bruises and everything, and he makes it out of there. As I said, 17 other people died, but like, that's the start of the bad luck, just a train derailing and plunging into a river. Obviously, their luck is bad enough there, but 1 year later in 1963, he decides to do air travel, probably done with the whole train game. He was on a plane traveling from Zagreb to Rijeka, I hope I said those right, when on this plane, dude, a door ends up flying off the plane, right? And everyone has seen it in the movies when like a door comes off the plane and the vacuum opens up and stuff starts to get sucked out. And that actually starts happening, but instead of just stuff getting sucked out, he manages to get sucked out of the aircraft. Yeah, that's right, dude. He literally gets pulled out of an airplane that had a malfunction. And a couple minutes after he's yanked out of the airplane through this open door, the plane goes down, because obviously it can't fly very well with the door open, and everybody else on the plane was killed in the crash. But somehow, this dude wakes up in the hospital. He had been found in a haystack, like a little bit away. He had been pulled out of the plane, manages to land in a pile of soft hay. Everyone else on the plane crashes, but he's fine. He really doesn't have too much memory of it. In fact, he just woke up in the haystack. And at this point, you're like, all right, dude, maybe traveling isn't for you. You know, let's be realistic here. It might not be a good situation for you to be going anywhere. If the train has derailed, your planes are losing doors. But it gets worse. In 1966, so only a little bit after all of this, he decides, I'll try buses, right? There's no way that another bad thing could happen on a bus. The odds of that are slim to none. Well, sure enough, he's on this bus. Something crazy happens. There's an accident, and somehow the bus goes off a road and ends up in a river. So once again, he's in a situation where what he's traveling on has gone off the predetermined course and has now crashed into some frigid water. And this time on this bus crash, 4 people were killed. Still tragic, but you know, not 17 like the train. But as for this dude, he doesn't even really get any severe injuries. This bus has literally plummeted off the road into a river, and the worst injury he sustains is some cuts and bruises. So this is where the dynamic comes in. Is he lucky? Is he unlucky? Yeah, on one hand, he's surviving all these things with minor injuries, but on the other hand, like, why does all this stuff seem to happen everywhere this dude decides to travel? But the bus into the river is not the last one. 4 years later, in 1970, he's driving along in his car by himself. He's just decided to give up public transport. It's way too dangerous and not worth it. Well, somehow his car ends up suddenly catching fire, right? Literally bursts into flames. He pulls over, gets out of the car, starts to run away from the car, obviously, because a flaming car only means one thing if you've played video games, and the fuel tank explodes and engulfs the entire car in flames as soon as he gets out and starts running away. So once again, another incident where he's trying to get from point A to point B, and literally something explodes or has some catastrophic failure. And at this point, he's literally just knocking off the versions of transportation like it's no tomorrow. He's been in a train crash, a plane crash, a bus crash, his car's blowing up. Like, honestly, if this dude decided to ride a Razor scooter, I wouldn't be surprised if it was the first Razor scooter to spontaneously combust, even though it doesn't have a gas tank. But 3 years later, even after that, he gets a different car, you know, things go back to normal. Well, a faulty fuel pump ends up spraying gas all over the engine of another one of his cars, and it ends up shooting flames through the air vents. Yeah, that's right, dude. The first car fire, bad luck. The second one, extra bad luck, because this time, instead of just there being a fire, the malfunction causes the air conditioning to become a flamethrower. And you would think there's no way he gets out of that one without any crazy injuries, right? But somehow, even though his air vents start becoming a flamethrower, he gets out of the car, and the only injury he has is that his arm hair has been singed off. And at that point, all of his friends are calling him lucky. And I don't know why, like, only now they decided to go with that. You know, in my opinion, he was pretty lucky by the time he survived the other 9 crashes, but whatever. I also don't necessarily know if lucky would, like, describe it. Once again, dude, if my car just suddenly decided to become a flamethrower on me, I wouldn't consider myself lucky. I would be like, oh my god, my car just tried to kill me. And after that, he went on a good luck streak for quite a while. From 1973 to 1995, there was not that many incidences, right? But in 1995, he got hit by a city bus and only got minor injuries, so the bad luck comes back a bit. And then a year later, also in the 90s, in 96, he's doing his thing on a mountain road, once again in another car, and this time he comes around the corner, and instead of it bursting into flames, he sees a truck coming at him in his lane. And so he realizes he has 2 options, right? He can either hit the truck or, like, drive off the mountain. So he drives through the guardrail, jumps out of the car, lands in a tree, but the car keeps going and explodes 300 feet underneath him. So he literally has like a Spider-Man moment where he jumps out of a car plummeting down into a ravine and lands in a tree. That is some real Fast and Furious stuff we got going on here. Absolutely nutty. And then beyond that, to add a little bit to the luck, right? 2 days later, on his 73rd birthday, or 2 days after his 73rd birthday, I should say, he ends up winning the lottery. He wins $1.1 million. You know, he's just an ecstatic guy about it. At the time of being 73, he's on his 5th wife, but after almost dying 9 times, who can blame him? And he ended up buying 2 houses and a boat with his money and just decided to, like, live his life, bro. And in 2010, he just gave away the rest of his money to his relatives and decided to live frugally after that. But honestly, man, after you've lived through death 7 times, it's not like anything can really excite you the same way again. Regardless, that dude definitely has got the badge of luckiest and luckiest at the exact same time, and I'm not really sure what you guys think. I don't know what I would classify him as. Winning the lottery, pretty lucky, but at the same time, is that just life being like, sorry for almost killing you so many times, here's some money? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section. And I've got one more story for you guys that I think you're going to enjoy. We've talked about some unlucky people. I figured we'd wrap it up with the luckiest woman to ever exist. She's also incredibly smart, so, you know, we'll talk about it. Her name is Joan R. Ginther. She was born in 1947. She's still alive. She's still kicking around, and she's a former math professor at Stanford. She's got a PhD in statistics, so she knows her stats. And when somebody knows their stats, there's certain games that they're able to play a little bit better than the average bear. And she ended up figuring out the algorithm, which was like behind how they figure out where the winning lottery tickets go, right? And so she figures out with her PhD in statistics kind of where the winning tickets are likely to be, where they might be located, and then goes out and buys tickets from these locations. In doing this, she ends up winning $20 million. Now, there's a lot of arguments over whether or not she actually figured out an algorithm or just like used her birthday, but regardless, she's managed to win the lottery a plethora of times, so it seems kind of bizarre unless she has some weird system for picking it out or is literally just the luckiest person on the planet. And what's even weirder is this person just refuses to give interviews. They don't want to talk to people. They don't want to talk about their strategy. It's like Joan just kind of wants to be left alone, which, to be fair, if I also just won $20 million, I wouldn't want to be talking to people either. The only thing that kind of raises some red flags about this is that the store that has given her 2 of the 3 winning tickets she's received came from the same store. She buys these lottery tickets from this thing at the Times Market store, and she's won the lottery 4 times, as I've said, and 3 of the tickets came from things she purchased in her hometown, and 2 of them came from this particular market. Whether or not that just means that the algorithm like has it down in this particular city, who knows? But either way, winning the lottery 4 times is absolutely insane. And as for when she won the lottery, it is relatively spread out. Like, the first time she ever won the lottery was first in 1993. 1993, you're doing your thing. You win $5.4 million in the Texas Lotto. That's not a bad payday. If you adjust that to today, that's the equivalent of winning like $10 million. I don't know about y'all, but I'd take a nice $10 million check tomorrow if somebody offered it. After that, though, it doesn't stop there. 1993, she wins $10 million. 2006 happened. She wins $2 million off a scratch-off ticket, which, you know, the odds of doing that pretty slim, but hey, good for you. 2 years later, she's like, hey, let's get back to back on him, win $3 million from another ticket. So at this point, she's up to what, like, 15 million-ish? But 2 years after that, in 2010, she ended up winning $10 million, which was her largest prize yet. So in the span of, what was that, 4 years, from 2006 to 2010, she ended up winning the lottery 3 times, which is absolutely insane luck. And as for how she ended up taking the money, the first time that she got the prize, that $5.4 million in 1993, she ended up taking her prize annually over 19 years, which is basically like, you know, let me do some math here, but $5.4 million divided by 19 years here means that she was just getting a cool $284,000 a year from the state of Texas. Not too shabby if you ask me, especially if you just keep winning the lottery on top of it, right? But as for everything after that, she only did that one time. She took out everything else in, like, you know, just lump sum payments. The only problem with lump sum payments is they take that away quite a bit. So, like, for example, you win $10 million, you take the lump sum, you get $7.5 million after taxes, which is insane, the fact that this lady has won the lottery 4 times. And just to give you an idea of how rare this is, like the odds of this actually happening being absolutely slim to none, the odds of winning this time, or this many times, is 1 in 18 septillion. Like 1 in 18 septillion. We're not talking 1 in a million. We're not talking 1 in a billion here. I don't even know what septillion is, except for the fact that it's an insanely large number. As for like what she's currently up to with all that lottery money, she actually lives in Las Vegas, but likes to keep a low profile, you know. I think anyone who just moves around with a lot of money like that tends to try to keep a low profile, doesn't want people to know a crap ton about them. I will say, if she's such a fan of winning the lottery, though, Vegas does make sense for gambling. We do not have a state lottery. Not a lot of people know that, but, you know, if you're into other types of gambling, it's probably a good place to be. But yeah, that's the story of the lady who managed to win the lottery 4 times. Absolutely insane. Definitely up there as the luckiest. But on that note, guys, that's gonna do it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, I'd appreciate you taking a second to press the like button. Let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of the video. If you like this series, if you like this style, let me know. And of course, subscribe if you're new and turn on those notifications. If you want to help me out more, then you can of course check out my podcast, link down below to the Scuffed Cast, or use code SCRUBBY at the G Fuel checkout. And now that it's October, of course, we've got the Halloween merch. Be sure to pick that up if you haven't already. Link will be at the top of the description. And on that note, don't get anyone pregnant. If you do, make sure they're hot, and I'm out. Peace.
Nice rack and her ass Brazilian. Just turned 21, but my bank's a million. Swear I'm a little drunk, but it's a hell of a feeling. Got so damn high that I'm touching the ceiling, yeah. Next year, swear I'm doing the most. Me and my team.